Good morning, Petunia Preschool. Happy Friday. I hope you are doing well. It looks like the sun is shining. It is, I need to get my coffee. My coffee's way over there. Hold on. I need one of you to bring me my coffee. I hope you guys are all doing well this morning. The sun is out. Jesse's daily weather report. It was so very rainy yesterday. I think it made me tired, but today it looks like the sun's gonna come out. So maybe I'll even mow the lawn or something. I don't know. What else? Anything new? Not much. I went to the preschool yesterday and I made a little short video of me walking around the preschool. So you guys can watch that if you want to and see. I was walking through, it was kind of dark and I was turning lights on and one of them burnt right out when I was walking through the school. But I'll fix it so it won't be dark. I guess I'll just get right into it and read a book. David is sleeping. I'm letting him sleep in. He had a hard time falling asleep yesterday. Just this new routine is hard. So super glad it's the weekend and we're just gonna forget about bedtime and the routine and just relax, play video games, read books, have fun. Look at this really big, I'm saving it for David. I don't know if you can see it's bubble wrap, but look at how big those bubbles are. I got a special package yesterday and it had this cool bubble wrap. All right, let me read a story. I hope David doesn't get upset that I did a video before he woke up, but I'm just ready. I have a meeting today. Another meeting. Oh, let's read Snow White. We haven't read Snow White. Pretty soon I'm going to have to go and get different books. Let me scoot you closer. I have a different setup today and it's not very good. Turn this way. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Nope, Snowy. Nope, Snowy. Cat's trying to break into my bedroom. When he breaks into my bedroom, he does a couple things that aren't very good. One, he headbutts out of my window. Remember I was telling you how I have a screen in my living room. It's right across from me right now. And he headbutts out of it and then he comes to ask to come in, then he headbutts out. And last weekend, the night before Mother's Day, we left a window open. I don't know if he got in my room because he busted out a screen in my room as well right after I fixed it. So annoying. And he had gotten out, and usually when he gets out, he sticks close to home, and I could call him and he comes right home. And on Mother's Day, I woke up, it was beautiful and sunny, and I knew that he was gone immediately because as soon as I wake up, he starts meowing and meowing and meowing, and he wants to eat. And he was gone, and I got really worried, and I went outside looking for him, calling him, tapping the spoon on his plate like that he usually eats off of it, and nothing. He wasn't coming back, and I spent all day just thinking, oh no, my kitty's gone. But about dinner time, Zach went to get me since it was Mother's Day, I got to pick what I wanted to eat, and one of my favorite places to get food, it's called T.C. O'Leary's, and they have Grady, delicious soda bread. And I got soup and soda bread because I just wanted the soda bread. And my favorite dessert is bread pudding. And I got bread pudding. And Zach came back and he opened the door and he's like, look, the cat came back. And so he was gone all night and most of a day. And he came back with dirty whiskers. So I don't know, he's out there exploring. So much for can you hear him meowing? So much for my indoor cat. But what am I gonna do, huh? All right, Snow White. Have you watched the movie? I don't know what, I think that a lot of you have Disney Plus, and I think that you get to, all these old movies are on there. Yeah, Snoopy, you think so? Oh, here's all the dwarves. Do you remember their names? This is Sneezy, Sleepy, Dopey, Bashful. Bashful is another word for shy. Happy, Grumpy, and Doc. Those are the 7 dwarves. Dwarfs. I think I would say dwarves. Dwarfs. All right. Let me see here. Snoopy, quiet. Quiet coyote. Can you see? What? I'm trying to read a story to my friends. Think he's gonna let me read to you? Alright, I gotta fix my setup here. I should have just stuck with what I was doing. I have my phone propped up on a water bottle and a stack of books, and it's not very strong. All right, here's kitty ears. One snowy night in a castle far away, a little princess was born. Her parents named her Snow White. As the years passed, the child grew up to be a lovely young woman. Her beauty and her gentle nature won the hearts of all who knew her. After Snow White's father died, she lived in the castle with her stepmother, the queen. The queen was very beautiful, but she was cold and heartless. She was also jealous of Snow White's beauty. So she dressed the princess in rags and forced her to work as a maid. Kind of like Cinderella. Remember that stepmom? The evil queen, the evil stepmom. It's not how it is in real life. Oh, there she is. The queen's most prized possession was a magic mirror. Every day she would stand in front of it and ask, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all?" And every day the mirror would reply, "You, O queen, are the fairest in the land." Now, I just read something the other day that said in Snow White, she says, "Magic mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" And I always thought it was "Mirror, mirror on the wall." And in this book, it says "Mirror, mirror on the wall." I'm going to have to research that. Oh, you guys, the sun is shining. I'm so happy. While the queen spent her time admiring herself in the mirror, Snow White worked long hours in the castle. She always did her chores with a smile, often singing while she worked. One day, she drew water from the well, and she sang a song about her fondest dream. She wished a handsome prince would come to the castle and carry her away. Snow White gazed shyly in... Oh, you know what? I read this part, and I'm supposed to start with this part. "Please make my wish come true," whispered Snow White. No sooner had she said these words than a handsome prince appeared next to her. Snow White gazed shyly into the prince's eyes. The prince fell in love instantly, but Snow White suddenly became frightened and fled to the safety of the castle. That evening, as usual, the queen asked the mirror, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all?" But this time the mirror replied, "Her lips blood red, her hair like night, her skin like snow, her name Snow White." The queen was so furious that she immediately called for her huntsman. "Tomorrow take Snow White deep into the forest and harm her," she commanded. Then she gave the huntsman a jeweled box and told him to bring her proof that he had obeyed the order. The huntsman feared the evil queen and promised to do as she wished. The next morning, the huntsman took Snow White deep into the forest. He watched as the princess stopped to place a baby bird back in its nest. At that moment, the huntsman knew he could never harm this kind-hearted girl. He fell to his knees and begged for forgiveness. "My dear princess," he said, "you are not safe. The queen is jealous. She has ordered me to harm you, but I could never hurt you. Quickly, he added. Run into the forest and never return. Snow White was frightened by his words, but she did as she was told. She ran and ran until she could run no farther. Lost and alone, she sank to the ground and sobbed herself to sleep. Oh, poor Snow White. That would be scary, huh? Good thing it's just a fairy tale. It's just a story. The huntsman placed an animal's heart inside the box the queen had given him and presented it to her that night. The evil woman rejoiced, for she believed that the huntsman had carried out her order. Now I am the fairest one of all, she exclaimed triumphantly. No, Snoopy. He's wants to bust out, guys. When she woke the next morning, Snow White found herself surrounded by forest animals. Curious birds, rabbits, squirrels, chipmunks, and even a mother deer, and her fawn crept up for a closer look. Snow White laughed. She didn't feel lonely any longer. Do you know of a place where I can stay? Snow White asked her woodland friends. In response, two little birds chirped excitedly and began to tug gently at her cape. Snow White followed her new friends to a tiny cottage nestled among the trees. Oh, it's just like a doll's house, Snow White exclaimed. Since no one seemed to be home, Snow White stepped inside. Oh my, what a terrible mess, she cried. She stared in wonder at the 7 little chairs. 7 children must live here, she said. I'll just tidy up a bit and surprise them. Perhaps they'll let me stay for a while. Would you just go into a house? Remember when we read stories before where it happens a lot, where characters just go into somebody else's house, like Goldilocks, and we say, would you ever do that? Do you guys remember when we say, no, we would knock on the door, and if nobody answers, should you just go in? No. But do you remember the story I told you about when I had to run into somebody's house? Do you want me to tell it? One time, I was walking my dog Jethro, and David's awake. David! I'm always so excited to see him. I'm too excited in the morning to see him. I think he's not ready for me. He's so cute. Anyways, walking my dog Jethro, who is no longer alive. He died when David was very young. But Jethro was an old hound dog, and we were walking just right down the street, right out here by my house, and suddenly this big dog, angry dog, just started running down the street, barking, trying, like, right at us, just in the middle of the street. No people were with it, and my old hound dog, I knew, could not get in a fight with this big strong dog. And I was standing next to a house, and it was my neighbor's house. I didn't know my neighbor, and I just ran up to the porch. I opened the door and I ran inside, and I went, there's a dog chasing me. And the nice man was watching TV, and he stood up and was like, hi. And I said, there's a big dog. And he went out, and the dog came right up to the door. And the guy shooed the dog away and went outside. I was really close to my house. I was probably like a block and a half away from my house. And the guy came out and he asked me if I wanted him to walk me home. And I said, I think I was okay. And he stood out in the street while I walked home to make sure that the dog didn't come back. Well, let me tell you something. Many years later, gosh, it's been a long time, very, very recently, like within the last 5 months, I was walking my 2 doggies. There's David. I was walking my 2 doggies, and we have a neighbor just on the other side of my house here. And I saved that for you, but will you wait just until I'm done, since it's kind of loud? My neighbor, they have a new dog. It's a big, big dog. And their son, who's not much bigger than David, they let the boy walk the dog. Well, several times now when the boy is walking the dog, that dog wants to attack my dogs, and the boy cannot hang on to the leash. And I've had to yell at the dogs. I've had to yell at the boy to make sure. Hey, David, don't let Snoopy in there. I already let him in. It was an accident. Okay, now you got to get him out. Every day I say, if you go in my room, close the door behind you. Anyway, get him out because he'll bust out the window or climb on the shelves. Anyway, I was walking my dogs and I saw the boy and the dog, and the dog started running over, and the leash that this child uses is so long, and it makes it even harder for this young boy to control his ginormous dog. And I had to run up onto the porch of this very same neighbor. I was just happened to be right there again. And he came out and said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yes. Do you remember me? I ran into your house many years ago." And he did. He remembered me. And it was very nice. It's very nice to have that nice neighbor. Thank you, David. That was okay with me just running into their house. But normally you don't just go into somebody's house. Yes, thank you. But anyway, Snow White also just went into the house.
Sorry, I had to push you.
All right. Snow White began to clean the cottage. The animals helped her sweep and dust and wash and scrub. Soon the cottage was neat and tidy. Snow White went upstairs where she found 7 little beds lined up in a row. Huh?
What do you have your makeup at?
Oh, it was a delivery. Not doing another.
I want to.
I mean, you can. Some new lipstick and eyeshadow there. But that's about it. That's all. Just face wash. Snow White went upstairs where she found 7 little beds lined up in a row. Hold on, bud.
Can I look in that delivery of snacks? See if I can have a snack in there that I can have.
First, will you go get the computer and carry it upstairs with 2 hands? I need to have it for my meeting, and we gotta check in school. Anyway, what funny little names for children, remarked Snow White.
Last night.
Come tell everybody.
Last night, when I was getting Epic opened, I went into Seesaw to try to get like a link to it, but there wasn't. But I saw that before it was even Friday, they put out the stuff that they do on Friday before Friday.
Because teachers aren't allowed to work on Fridays anymore, so your teachers put everything out early. And then they say, have a good 3-day weekend, but it's not a 3-day weekend for us. All right, let's get back to the story. What funny little names for children, remarked Snow White as she read the names aloud. Happy, Dopey, Grumpy, Sneezy, Bashful, Duck, and Sleepy. Then she yawned. I'm a little sleepy myself, she added. Snow White lay across the tiny beds and promptly fell asleep. What dwarf do you feel? Yesterday I felt like Sleepy. Today, happy, dopey, grumpy, sneezy. I don't know how I'm feeling. Happy? Happy because I'm talking to you. So she's sleeping across the beds because they're really short. So the beds are short, so she can't lay on it the regular way. She laid across. Meanwhile, 7 little men were hurrying home from a hard day's work in the diamond mine. They didn't know it, but they had a surprise waiting for them when they came home. For these were the 7 dwarfs who lived in the cottage where Snow White lay sleeping. They sang merrily as they walked through the forest. Doc led the way with a lantern behind him. Behind him were Grumpy, Happy, Sleepy, Sneezy, Bashful, and last of all, Dopey. 2 hands, I said.
Well, I didn't listen.
David, put it down nice. Put it down up here, honey. And you want to go ahead and go look for a snack, and then I think we just have to turn in your math. So here they come. What song do they sing when they're walking? Whistle while you work. I can't really whistle.
I'll have this lemon bar.
Okay. As they neared the house, the dwarfs noticed that something was different. The windows were clean. Cautiously, they crept inside. Everything was neat and tidy. Just as I thought, cried Doc. Someone's been here. Maybe it's a goblin, said Bashful. And maybe it's still here. Room for my David.
This is the lemon bar I'm having. I'm doing a lemon bar.
I bet it's good.
Whole nutrition bar. It's a nutrition bar. It's nutritional.
It's nutritional?
Yeah, see, it's a whole nutritional bar.
Good.
The whole thing is nutritional. No sugar, probably a sugar.
You read how many grams of sugar. There's definitely going to be a lot of sugar in that bar.
Let's see.
It's probably right.
A
right
little.
here. No, you have to lift up that
little-
flap. Right here.
Oh. It says total fat 16. Wait,
16?
6 grams. 6 grams of
Where
fat.
does it say sugar? Total sugar is 9. Not so. Anything over 7 is supposed to be a lot.
No, it says total fat is 6 grams. That's not a lot. But look what it looks super good.
D, I gotta finish reading this book.
So
Then
it's like
looks like a candy bar.
it's like yellow and it has this on the bottom and it's like white chocolate. And it's delicious.
Okay, you read that. So they came home and there was a surprise waiting for them. It's a girl, declared Doc. She's beautiful, added Happy. Snow White was awakened by their voices. Ooh, she cried when she saw them. Why, you're not children at all. You're little men. That's right, said Doc. But who are you? Snow White introduced herself and told them all about the Wicked Queen. You can stay with us, said Doc. We won't let anything happen to you. All the other dwarfs agreed. How is it?
Good as it always is.
Back at the castle, the queen once again consulted her magic mirror. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest one of all? She asked. She was so sure she knew the answer, but the mirror replied, over the 7 jeweled hills beyond the 7th fall, in a cottage of the 7 dwarfs, dwells Snow White, fairest one of all. The queen was outraged. The huntsman lied. The queen was outraged. The huntsman lied, she shouted, knocking the jeweled box to the ground. Now I will have to take care of her myself. The queen ran down the stairs. Wait until the book is done, honey. The queen ran down the stairs to the dark dungeon room where she kept an assortment of enchanted powers and bubbling liquids. She quickly mixed herself a magic potion. When she drank the potion, she instantly turned into an ugly old woman. Then she cast a magic spell over the luscious red apple. One bite of this poison apple, said, and Snow White will sleep forever, cackled the witch with glee. Ooh. That night, at the little cottage, Snow White cooked a special meal for the dwarfs. Supper's almost ready, she told them. You'll just have time to wash. Wash? Chorused the dwarfs. They had almost forgotten what that word meant, but Snow White was so firm, so they all went outside to scrub themselves clean. Even Grumpy got a soaking. Now wash your hands, right?
I'm eating it slowly.
Good, good. After dinner, it was time for some fun. The dwarfs played their musical instruments and took turns dancing with Snow White. Dopey climbed onto Sneezy's shoulders and covered them with both with a long coat. Now he was as tall as Snow White, but not for long. One sneeze from Sneezy sent them both tumbling to the floor. Before they set off for work the next morning, Snow White gave each dwarf a kiss goodbye. Beware of strangers, warned Doc. No telling what that wicked queen might do. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Okay, well, Don't worry, replied Snow White. I'll be careful. After the dwarfs left, Snow White began making pies. All alone, my pet? She heard someone ask. Snow White turned and saw an old woman in the window. How would you like to taste one of my nice apples? They're wishing apples, you know, the old woman said. They do look good, replied Snow White. Do you need help? Please don't wipe food on the table, honey. you need help, let me
Hair
know.
right there, too.
Now, look at her. Would you...
There's hair here too. There's a bunch of.
Did you
hair.
wash your hands before you got food to eat? Looks like no. Good grief. So the leaf.
There's just a bunch of hair on there.
And,
Just pull that off.
oh my goodness. Let's go wash your hands before you leave. Now look at that witch. If that came to my window, I wouldn't be taking any apples. Look. She could have disguised herself as a friendly looking lady. The animals recognized the queens at once, but Snow White didn't. Snow White took the apple and made a wish. As soon as she bit into the apple, she fell to the floor. Only love's first kiss could wake the sleeping princess. Ha ha ha, cackled the queen. Now, my pretty princess, you will sleep forever. Poor Snow White. The animals hurried to the mine. They tugged at the dwarf's
Your face
clothes
is like,
until
"Give
the
me that."
little man understood that something was terribly. The little men understood that something was terribly wrong. The dwarfs jumped onto the deer and headed for the cottage. On their way, they spotted an old woman and recognized the queen in disguise. "Follow her," Grumpy shouted. So they chased her all the way up the steep cliff. Uh-oh.
Hey.
The queen reached the top of the cliff and was trapped on a narrow ledge. She was about to push a huge boulder onto the dwarfs when a bolt of lightning struck the ledge. With a horrible scream, she fell to the jagged rocks below. The wicked queen was gone forever.
I'm serious. It's a mirror, mirror on the wall, not magic mirror on the wall.
Oh, good. I'm glad that's what it is, because that's what I always thought it was. When the dwarfs finally arrived home, they found Snow White asleep on the floor. Nothing they did could wake her from her sleep. With tears in their eyes, they gently laid Snow White on a bed. The next day, the dwarfs built a golden casket for Snow White, and it was covered with glass so that they could always see her. Then they carried the casket to a peaceful glen in the depths of the forest, where the tall pine trees carpeted the ground with their fragrant needles. For many days, the dwarfs stayed by Snow White's side, hoping that she would wake up, but Snow White slept on and on.
Mommy.
Hold on, babe. Meanwhile, the lonely prince had been searching for Snow White far and wide. One day he heard of a beautiful maiden who slept in a golden casket deep in the forest, surrounded by 7 little men. Finally, he came upon Snow White. He lifted the heavy glass lid. "My beautiful Snow White, at last I have found you," he whispered, and then he kissed the sleeping princess. Snow White opened her eyes. The spell was broken.
Mommy.
The prince gathered Snow White in his arms and lifted her onto his horse. This time Snow White was not afraid of her handsome prince. "Goodbye," she called out to the dwarfs. "You have been good, kind friends. I will never forget you." Snow White kept her promise. She included the dwarfs in all the festivities at the castle, where she and her prince lived happily ever after.
Well, it's everything on just happily ever after.
Well, yeah, especially in these old Disney books. All right, friends, it's Friday, so we'll see you again on Monday, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Mommy, I think people think that it's magic mirror on the wall, because I know it's mirror, mirror on the wall.
Okay, that's what I thought. Mirror, mirror on the wall, not magic mirror on the wall. All right, get out into the sunshine, because after today, it looks like there's going to be a lot of days of rain again, so...
Crap.
Put it aside. All right. Jesse and
David.
David
And lemon bar.
and a lemon bar
Otis.
and Otis, the Tasmanian devil. Is that what he is?
And bubble wrap.
Signing
Signing
out.
out.